Have you ever wondered how life might change if the person you love the most is no longer by your side? In this video, we dive into the profound experiences of those who have faced this heart-wrenching reality and share essential insights on how to navigate through the grief, loneliness, and challenges that come with losing a spouse. These stories will not only touch your heart, but also provide you with invaluable advice on living a fulfilling life in your later years. Stay with us until the end to discover the 3 critical things you must avoid to ensure your later years are not just bearable but truly enriching and vibrant. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. When a spouse passes away, it feels as if the very essence of life has been stripped away, leaving behind a house that echoes with an unbearable emptiness. The silence becomes deafening, and every corner of the home seems to cry out for the person who is no longer there. It's as if the anchor that once held life steady has been pulled up, leaving you adrift in a sea of sorrow. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The pain is indescribable, and the heartache seems endless. Yet, amid this profound grief, time marches on, relentless and unforgiving. The harsh truth is that no matter how deeply you mourn, no matter how much you wish otherwise, the person you've lost will not return. Life demands that we move forward, even when every step feels like a betrayal of the love we cherished. In the face of such overwhelming loss, it's easy to feel as though you've lost not just your partner but also your very will to live. The world becomes a shadow of what it once was, and the future seems bleak and uninviting. However, healing is possible, and it begins with a simple, painful truth to honor the memory of the one who has passed. You must find a way to live fully once more. This isn't just about surviving, it's about rediscovering the joy and purpose that your spouse would have wanted for you. 3 individuals, each having walked this path of grief, have shared their deeply personal stories. They offer their wisdom and heartfelt advice to those who find themselves in the same painful position. They urge middle-aged and elderly friends to avoid 3 specific behaviors that can trap them in an endless cycle of sorrow and prevent them from finding peace and happiness in their later years. These 3 refusals are essential steps toward reclaiming your life after such a devastating loss. The first piece of advice is to refuse to be consumed by grief for too long. It's natural to mourn deeply for a partner who was a part of your life for so many years. Their absence leaves a void that feels impossible to fill, even if you are surrounded by loving children and friends. The ache in your heart is a constant reminder of what you've lost. It's easy to become lost in this pain, to linger in that sorrowful place where every memory brings fresh tears, and the thought of moving forward seems unimaginable. Miss Lee, a 67-year-old woman, knows this feeling all too well. She lost her husband 3 years ago when she was 64. The pain of that loss was so intense that it nearly consumed her. When my husband passed away, she recalls, I felt like my life ended with him. For months, I was nothing more than a shell of a person. I couldn't see the point of going on. Every night I cried myself to sleep, and some nights I didn't sleep at all. The emptiness in our bed was unbearable. It felt wrong to be there without him. But then I would look at our old photos, those happy, smiling moments, and I realized that he wouldn't want this for me. He would want me to live, to find happiness again, even if it was without him. So I decided to keep going, not just for myself, but for him too. I knew that my tears wouldn't bring him back, and the best way to honor his memory was to live well. Miss Lee's story is a poignant reminder that while the separation of life and death is one of the greatest sorrows we can experience, it doesn't have to be the end of our story. The memories of the past, no matter how sweet, cannot become a prison that keeps us from seeing the beauty that still exists in the world around us. Yes, the past was beautiful, and those memories are treasures to be cherished, but they cannot replace the life that still waits to be lived. To dwell forever in the past is to risk missing out on the joys that the present and the future still hold. Learning to let go, to move forward, and to embrace the life you have left is not a betrayal of the love you shared. It is, instead, the most profound way to honor it. By living well, by finding new joys, and by continuing to grow, you allow your spouse's memory to live on, not as a source of pain, but as a source of strength and inspiration. It's a gift to yourself and to them, a way to say, I loved you, I still love you, and because of that love, I will continue to live fully. When a spouse passes away, it's as if the ground beneath you crumbles, leaving you teetering on the edge of an emotional abyss. The sense of loss is overwhelming, and the weight of grief can feel insurmountable. However, in the face of such profound sorrow, it is crucial to stay calm and steady yourself. Take a deep breath, remind yourself to hold on to your strength, and prioritize your health. It's easy to let grief consume you, to fall into a spiral of despair where the world becomes dark and uninviting. But remember, you are still here, and your life, though changed, is still precious. In those early days, as you navigate the shock and sadness, it's essential to adjust your mindset gradually. Allow yourself to mourn, but also recognize the importance of rebuilding your confidence and embracing a life of self-sufficiency. Your spouse would want you to live with strength and dignity, to carry on with grace. So find small ways to cheer yourself up. Eat when you can, rest when you need to, and take solace in the simple pleasures of life, strolling through the park, wandering through familiar streets, and soaking in the beauty of the world around you. These moments of tranquility can be healing, offering you a sense of peace amidst the storm. One of the most valuable lessons you can learn during this time is the art of solitude. It's natural to want to lean on others, to seek comfort in the presence of loved ones. But there is also great strength in learning to enjoy your own company, to find elegance and wisdom in solitude. Think of it as nurturing your inner world, like savoring a fine, aged wine. Embrace the quiet moments, allow yourself to reflect, and discover the richness of life that comes from within. When loneliness creeps in, reach out to friends, engage in heartfelt conversations, and find joy in the connections you've built over the years. By doing this, you can turn what might seem like lonely later years into a time of personal growth and contentment, where you continue to thrive on your terms. Secondly, it is vital to refuse the temptation to over-rely on your children as you navigate this new chapter of life. It's natural to look to them for comfort and support, especially when your spouse is no longer there to share the burden of life's challenges. Many elderly parents imagine that moving in with a particular child will provide the security and companionship they crave in their later years. It seems like the perfect solution, being close to your loved ones, having them nearby to care for you. However, today's younger generation often prefers to live independently. Their lifestyles, habits, and even their views on spending and child rearing differ significantly from those of their parents. They are juggling their responsibilities, careers, families, and the countless pressures that come with modern life. While the idea of having your children with you 24/7 might seem comforting, it's important to understand that their lives are complex and demanding in ways that may not be immediately visible. Expecting them to put their own lives on hold to care for you can place an undue burden on them and strain the relationship. As you move forward, it's essential to respect their need for independence while also cultivating your own. By doing so, you allow them to thrive in their own lives, and you set yourself up for a life that is rich and fulfilling, even without constant reliance on others. This doesn't mean you have to sever ties or live in isolation. Rather, it's about finding a balance that allows both you and your children to live fully and happily. In this way, you create a future where your later years are not marked by dependency, but by resilience, wisdom, and a deep sense of personal satisfaction. Mrs. Howe, now 65, recounts her journey through loss and self-discovery with a depth of emotion that reflects the many layers of her life's experiences. Her story is one that many can relate to, especially those who have found themselves navigating the complex emotions that come with the passing of a spouse and the changing dynamics of family relationships. As she speaks, her voice carries the weight of memories, both sweet and bitter, that have shaped her understanding of what it means to grow old and to find peace in solitude. When my husband passed away, it felt as though my entire world had crumbled, Mrs. How begins, her eyes reflecting the pain of that moment. We had spent so many years together, planning our future, imagining our old age side by side. We were both retired, and I had always pictured us growing old together, enjoying the fruits of our labor, and sharing the quiet joys of life. But then, out of nowhere, a disease took him from me, and I was left alone. It was like a part of me died with him. The loss was a devastating blow, one that left her reeling and uncertain of how to move forward. In those first few weeks and months after his passing, I was lost, she admits. The house, once filled with his presence, now felt like a hollow shell. Every corner reminded me of him, and the silence was unbearable. I didn't know how to cope with the emptiness, how to live without him. The future that we had envisioned together had vanished, leaving behind nothing but a void. During this difficult time, her daughter had just given birth to a grandson, a joyful event that brought a glimmer of hope into Mrs. How's life? Her son-in-law, seeing her grief and knowing how much she was struggling, suggested that she move in with them. He told me that I shouldn't be alone, that it was better for me to be with family, she recalls. I was so grateful for their offer, for the comfort of knowing that I wouldn't have to face this dark period by myself. It felt like a lifeline, something to hold on to amid all the sadness. Moving in with her daughter's family brought a sense of purpose back into Mrs. How's life? I threw myself into helping them, she says. Taking care of my grandson, helping around the house, it gave me something to focus on, something to keep my mind off the pain. My grandson was like a little piece of my husband that had come back to me. I saw him as a reincarnation of the love that I had lost, and I devoted all my energy to him. For a time, this new arrangement seemed to work well. Mrs. Howe felt needed and appreciated, and her daughter and son-in-law even gave her a monthly allowance to cover her living expenses. It wasn't much, but it made me feel like I was still contributing to the household, that I was still valued. She explains, it was a comfort, knowing that I had a role to play, that I was still a part of the family. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. However, as the months turned into years, Mrs. Howe began to notice subtle changes in the way her daughter and son-in-law treated her. At first, they were so kind and considerate, always making sure I was comfortable, always thanking me for my help, she says. But gradually, things started to change. They stopped giving me the allowance, saying that I had my pension and didn't need it anymore. That didn't bother me too much. I was happy to use my pension to cover my expenses. But it was more than just the money. It was the way they started to act around me. And Mrs. Howe describes how the warmth and affection that had initially defined their relationship began to fade. There was a time when my daughter would sit with me in the evenings, and we would talk about everything, our memories, our hopes, our worries, she reminisces. But those conversations became fewer and farther between. She started to seem more distant, more preoccupied with her own life. My son-in-law, too, began to treat me more like a guest than a family member. It was as if they were tired of having me around, as if I was a burden they had to bear. The realization that she was no longer truly welcome in her daughter's home was a painful one for Mrs. Howe. It hurt more than I can express, she confesses. I had given everything I had to help them, to be there for them, and yet over time I felt like I was being pushed aside. I never imagined that my presence would become an inconvenience, that the love and care I had offered would be met with such indifference. Mrs. Howe's story highlights a difficult truth that many elderly parents face: the assumption that children will naturally step into the role of caregivers. Offering the same unconditional support that they once received often doesn't align with the realities of modern life. I always thought that when the time came, my daughter would take care of me just as I had taken care of her, she says with a sad smile. But I didn't consider the pressures and demands that she faces in her own life. She has her own family to care for and her challenges to navigate. And as much as she might love me, she can't be everything to everyone. Reflecting on this experience, Mrs. Howe has come to understand the importance of maintaining one's independence, even in the face of loss and loneliness. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with it, she says thoughtfully. But I've realized that I can't rely on anyone else to provide me with the happiness or security that I need. I have to find it within myself. It's not easy, especially after so many years of living with someone else, of sharing everything with a partner. But it's necessary. Now living alone once again, Mrs. Howe has embraced the solitude that once frightened her. I've learned to cherish my own company, she explains. I spend my days doing the things I enjoy: reading, gardening, taking walks in the park. I've reconnected with old friends, and I make a point of staying socially active, even though I live by myself. It's not the life I imagined, but it's a good life, and I'm grateful for it. Her story is a powerful reminder that while the loss of a spouse and the changing dynamics of family relationships can be incredibly challenging, it's possible to find peace and fulfillment by embracing independence and cultivating a strong sense of self. I don't have the companionship that I once had, she says, but I found a new kind of strength, a new way of living that brings me peace. And that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. As she reflects on her journey, Mrs. Howe offers this advice to others who may be facing similar challenges. Don't be afraid to stand on your own 2 feet. Don't lose yourself in the service of others, no matter how much you love them. Take care of your own needs. And don't be afraid to prioritize your happiness. It's not selfish, it's necessary. In the end, you're the one who has to live with your choices, and you deserve to live a life that brings you joy and fulfillment. In her words and her story, there is a deep well of wisdom that comes from a life lived with both love and loss. Mrs. Howe's experiences serve as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and to the power of finding peace within oneself, even in the face of life's most difficult challenges. As my grandson grew older and the household expenses increased, my modest pension, which had once been enough to sustain me, could no longer stretch to cover the needs of a family of 4. The rising costs, from groceries to utilities, weighed heavily on my mind, and I felt the strain of contributing so little financially. I brought up the issue with my daughter several times, hoping that she would understand and perhaps offer some assistance. However, her responses were far from what I had hoped. There were times when she seemed impatient, brushing off my concerns as though they were trivial. Occasionally, she would give me a small sum of money, but more often than not, she pretended to forget my requests, leaving me feeling increasingly helpless and frustrated. Living under the same roof inevitably brought us closer, but it also magnified our differences. As the years passed, the differences between us became more pronounced. I found myself unable to hold back my opinions, particularly when it came to my daughter's spending habits. I would watch her shop online daily, often purchasing things that I felt were unnecessary, and I couldn't help but voice my concerns. You should save for a rainy day, I would say, worried that her carefree spending would lead to problems down the road. But my advice was rarely welcomed. My daughter would roll her eyes, dismissing my words as old-fashioned, and our conversations grew increasingly strained. The disagreements didn't stop at finances. When it came to raising my grandson, my daughter and son-in-law adopted a hands-off approach, believing in letting him develop naturally, without too much interference. I, on the other hand, believed that children needed discipline from a young age to grow into responsible adults. I couldn't stay silent when I saw behaviors I thought needed correction, and this too became a point of contention. The once warm and respectful tone between us slowly eroded, replaced by terse exchanges and a growing distance that neither of us seemed able to bridge. Over time, I noticed that my daughter and son-in-law's behavior toward me began to change. They spoke to me less politely. and the respect that had once characterized our relationship seemed to diminish. I couldn't ignore the sense that my presence in their home was no longer welcomed with the same warmth it once was. The realization was painful but undeniable. The home that I had moved into, believing it would be a place of comfort and connection, had become a place where I felt more like a burden than a beloved family member. The final decision to move back to my own home was not an easy one. I spent many sleepless nights thinking about it, weighing the loneliness I feared against the growing tension in my daughter's home. When I finally gathered the courage to bring it up, I was met with mixed reactions. They told me they would miss me, but there was an undeniable sense of relief in their voices. I could see it in their eyes, the subtle shift from worry to ease. It was clear that while they loved me, my departure would lift a weight from their shoulders. I realized then that my help had been invaluable when my grandson was younger, but now that he was older and more independent, my role in their lives had diminished. They no longer needed me in the same way. Returning to my own home was both liberating and daunting. The first few weeks were the hardest. The house felt too quiet. The absence of daily tasks and the company of my grandson left me feeling idle and purposeless. I missed the noise, the bustle of family life, even the little disagreements. The days seemed to stretch endlessly, and the silence was oppressive. Without the constant demands of family life, I found myself confronting the emptiness I had long tried to ignore. I felt lost, like a ship adrift without an anchor, searching for something to hold on to. But as time passed, something remarkable began to happen. I started to rediscover the person I had been before life's responsibilities had consumed me. I realized that I didn't have to feel empty just because I was alone. I could fill that space with the things that brought me joy, with activities that nurtured my soul and reminded me of the richness of life. I enrolled in calligraphy and painting classes, hobbies I had always been interested in but had never had the time to pursue. These classes became a sanctuary for me, a place where I could express myself and lose myself in the flow of creativity. I also joined community groups, meeting people who shared similar interests and who, like me, were navigating their paths of self-discovery. Through these new friendships, I found a sense of belonging that I hadn't realized I was missing. We would gather regularly, sharing stories, laughter, and sometimes even our grief. It was in these moments that I learned the true value of companionship, not born out of necessity, but out of genuine connection and mutual respect. As my days began to fill with these activities, I noticed a profound shift in my outlook on life. The loneliness that had once seemed so daunting began to recede, replaced by a quiet contentment. I found myself looking forward to each day, eager to see what new experiences awaited me. My life, once centered around my family's needs, had expanded to include my desires and dreams. I began to see the beauty in solitude, the freedom it offered to live life on my terms, without the pressures or expectations of others. Looking back, I realized that this chapter of my life, though born out of loss, has led me to a place of fulfillment and peace that I might never have discovered otherwise. I've come to appreciate the independence that living alone affords me, the ability to make decisions based solely on what I want and need. My home has become a haven, a place where I can explore my interests and enjoy the tranquility that comes from knowing that I am in control of my happiness. In the end, I've found that a life of financial stability, leisure, and the freedom to pursue my passions is the retirement I had always longed for, even if I didn't realize it at first. The journey to get here was not easy, and it was marked by moments of deep sadness and doubt. But through it all, I've learned that true contentment comes not from relying on others, but from cultivating a rich inner life and embracing the person you are, even in solitude. As I reflect on the life I built for myself, I am filled with a sense of pride and satisfaction. After my husband passed away, I feared that my life would never feel complete again. But in finding my way back to myself, I've discovered that I am stronger and more resilient than I ever knew. I am living the retirement life I always wanted, a life where I am free to be me, to enjoy the fruits of my labor, and to savor every moment with a heart full of peace and a spirit unburdened by the past. Thirdly, it is essential to resist the urge to rashly seek out a new partner or remarry after the loss of a spouse. While it's often said that second marriages are fraught with risks, this statement is both partially true and partially misleading. The truth lies in the complexities that accompany remarriages later in life. As we age, our habits, beliefs, and worldviews become deeply ingrained, shaped by decades of personal experiences. These characteristics, while defining who we are, can also create significant challenges when attempting to forge a new partnership in our later years. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. When a spouse passes away, the immediate sense of loneliness can be overwhelming. The fear of facing the future alone, especially after having shared so much of life with a partner, can be daunting. It's only natural to yearn for companionship, to seek out someone who might fill the void left behind, and to provide mutual support as the years go by. However, the decision to remarry or even enter into a new relationship at an older age is not one to be taken lightly. Elderly remarriages, while offering the promise of companionship, also come with their own set of unique challenges and risks. The dynamics of a second marriage are often complicated by the individual habits and routines that each person has developed over a lifetime. These deeply rooted behaviors can sometimes clash, making it difficult to establish the kind of harmonious relationship that both parties may desire. Moreover, there is an inherent selfishness in all of us, a natural inclination to prioritize our own needs and comforts. In a second marriage, where both individuals are likely set in their ways, this selfishness can become a barrier to truly walking the rest of the journey together with sincerity and mutual understanding. Finding a like-minded companion, someone who shares your values and can genuinely support you in your later years, is not impossible, but it is certainly challenging. The pool of potential partners is smaller, and the stakes are higher. The wrong choice, whether it's someone who is not truly compatible or who has ulterior motives, can bring not just disappointment but real calamity to your remaining years. Imagine spending your twilight years in a relationship that brings more strife than peace, more regret than happiness. The emotional, financial, and even physical consequences of such a mistake can be severe, leaving you in a worse situation than if you had chosen to remain alone. That's not to say that seeking companionship in later life is inherently wrong. For some, finding a new partner can indeed bring joy and fulfillment, but it's crucial to approach this decision with a clear mind and a cautious heart. Rather than rushing into a new relationship out of fear of loneliness, take the time to carefully consider what you truly need and want from a partner at this stage in your life. Evaluate whether you're looking for someone to share your life with on equal terms, or if you're simply trying to fill the emptiness left by your loss. It's important to distinguish between the desire for genuine companionship and the impulse to avoid facing life alone. If you do decide to pursue a new relationship, do so with your eyes wide open. Be aware of the potential risks and take steps to protect yourself, both emotionally and financially. Ensure that the person you choose to let into your life is someone who respects your boundaries, shares your values, and is genuinely committed to building a partnership based on mutual care and understanding. And if you find that the challenges outweigh the benefits, remember that it is perfectly okay to choose solitude over a compromised companionship. Many find that living independently, surrounded by friends and family rather than a new partner, can be deeply satisfying and fulfilling. Ultimately, the decision to remarry or to remain single in your later years is a deeply personal one, and there is no right or wrong answer. However, it's a decision that should be made thoughtfully, with an awareness of the potential risks and a commitment to ensuring that your later years are as peaceful and happy as possible. Life after the loss of a spouse is never easy, but by approaching this new chapter with wisdom and caution, you can ensure that the choices you make will lead to a fulfilling and contented life. Mrs. Fong, now 62 years old, carries with her the weight of 2 marriages, both of which have left deep and lasting impressions on her life. Her story is one of love, loss, and the painful lessons that come with remarriage later in life. As she recounts her experiences, there is a mixture of sorrow and anger in her voice, particularly when she speaks of her second marriage, a relationship that still stirs up painful memories and unresolved emotions. "I've been through 2 marriages, Mrs." Fong begins her tone reflective yet tinged with regret. "My first husband passed away when I was 53, just as we were beginning to think about retirement and the possibility of finally enjoying life together. We had so many plans, traveling, spending time with our grandchildren, simply being together after all those years of hard work. But those dreams were cut short when he fell ill and died before he could even retire. His death left me devastated, and for a long time I couldn't find my way out of the grief." The loss of her first husband was a blow that left Mrs. Fong adrift, unsure of how to move forward. "My son saw how much I was struggling," she continues, "and he was worried about me. He wanted me to come live with him, but I didn't want to be a burden. They were busy with their own lives, and I didn't want to add to their stress. He then suggested that I join a senior travel group to lift my spirits, but again, I didn't want to trouble him. Instead, I decided to enroll in a dance and poetry recitation class on my own. I thought it would be a good way to keep myself occupied and maybe meet new people." It was in this class that Mrs. Fong met Mr. Lu, the man who would become her second husband. "At first, we were just acquaintances," she recalls. "We would chat casually during class, nothing more. But then one day I sprained my ankle while going down the stairs. Mr. Lu was the first to come to my aid. He took me to the hospital and then insisted on helping me at home while I recovered. For those few days, I couldn't attend class. But Mr. Lu came over every day, bringing me meals and keeping me company. Gradually, we became closer. As their friendship deepened, Mr. Lu began to express his feelings for Mrs. Fong. 2 months later, he proposed to me," she says, a hint of wistfulness in her voice. "He said he liked me and wanted us to be together, to support each other in our later years. I was happy after all. It felt good to be cared for and wanted again. But I didn't agree right away. I told him I needed to discuss it with my son first." Mrs. Fong's son didn't oppose the idea of her remarrying, but he urged caution. He suggested that we meet Mr. Lu's family before making any decisions, she explains. He thought it was important to see how they were and whether they would be welcoming. Mr. Lu agreed readily, and that night we had dinner with both families together. Afterward, my son advised me to take my time and observe more, not to rush into marriage. But I was caught up in the moment. I thought Mr. Lu was good enough, and I didn't listen to my son's warning. Despite her son's advice, Mrs. Fong quickly proceeded with the marriage. A few days later, we registered our marriage, and I moved into his house, she says. In the beginning, everything seemed fine. We got along well, and I didn't mind doing the housework because I was used to it. But things started to change when 3 of my old friends invited me to travel with them. I agreed without hesitation. But Mr. Lu wasn't happy about it. He complained that if I went on the trip, there would be no one to do the housework. I felt it was unfair after all. I wasn't hired to be a maid. That day we had our first big argument. He said some hurtful things, implying that I was only good for doing chores. For the first time, I began to doubt whether this marriage was the right choice. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment on 4 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The situation deteriorated further after Mrs. Fong returned from her trip. When I came back, things were worse than ever, she says with a sigh. Mr. Lu's son had just gone through a divorce and left his young son with us. I tried to take care of the boy as if he were my own, but he was spoiled, picky with his food, and threw tantrums whenever he didn't get his way. It was exhausting, and I found myself struggling to keep up. I talked to Mr. Lu about it, suggesting that his son should take more responsibility for the child, but Mr. Lu opposed strongly. He told me, "You're not my grandson's mother, so don't interfere. If you can't handle it, just stay out of it." His words cut deep, and for the first time I truly understood how difficult it is to gain acceptance from a new partner's family, especially at this age. Mrs. Fong's experience with Mr. Lu made her realize the complexities and challenges of remarriage in later life. "I felt extremely wrong," she says quietly. "I had gone into this marriage hoping for companionship and mutual support, but instead, I found myself in a situation where I was treated more like an outsider than a partner. It was clear that I wasn't truly part of the family, and I couldn't live like that anymore. After months of enduring the tension and the feeling of being unwanted, I finally decided to file for divorce. Thankfully, the process was smooth, and I was able to leave without much trouble." Looking back now, Mrs. Fong has gained valuable perspective on her experiences. Reflecting on it all, I've come to realize that living alone might be lonely at times, but it's far better than dealing with the stress and heartache that come with an unhappy remarriage. I had hoped that my second marriage would bring me peace and companionship, but instead, it brought more problems and pain. Now, I'm focused on taking care of myself and enjoying my independence. I've rediscovered my interests, and I'm living a life that, while solitary, is fulfilling in its way. Mrs. Fong's story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of caution and self-awareness when considering remarriage later in life. While the desire for companionship is natural, it's crucial to approach such decisions with a clear understanding of the potential challenges and to prioritize one's well-being and happiness above all else. As we come to the end of these heartfelt and deeply personal stories, it's important to take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. The experiences shared by Mrs. Hao and Mrs. Fong offer invaluable lessons about life, love, loves, and the challenges that come with aging. Whether it's learning to embrace solitude, understanding the complexities of remarriage, or finding peace in independence, these stories provide us with much to think about. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What have you learned from these stories? Is there a particular insight or lesson that resonates with you and that you plan to apply in your own life? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your reflections could be a source of inspiration and guidance for others in our community. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching.